Hi everybody, it's Lynda Keane here, and with me I have Connie Jasinskas from Cambridge in Canada. So not
Yes.
UK, but Cambridge, Canada. So hi Connie.
Hi, Linda. Nice to see you.
And to see you. So not in person this year, but we've met now a couple of times on Zoom as well for different conferences, the A.R.E.A and things like that. So I've known you for a long time, Connie. I used to come and see you when you worked and did presentations for the Aquatic Exercise Association, A.E.A, in various parts of Florida, because that moved around at the time.
It did.
So how long have you been in the industry?
Since Moses was in short pants, I think. I started in the fitness business in the early 80s after I finished my master's degree in exercise physiology. So I got involved with a provincial training organization for land fitness leaders. So I was training land fitness for quite a number of years. About a decade later, I got involved with the aquatic world and fell in love, just absolutely fell in over my head in love with what water could do and how many people it could help and how powerful it was as a training tool. So I was blown away by it, and I really haven't looked back. I gave up the land-based training within 5 years of that and have just been water focused since then.
I think it's a lot of us do the same sort of thing. It finds us rather than we go searching for it. That something happens that takes us into the water, and it's our happy place. We never go back. So that's absolutely fabulous. So what sort of things were you doing initially when you came to the pool? Was it sort of with the elite athletes? Was it rehabilitation? Was it just sort of like water fitness?
Yeah, more general water fitness to start, aqua fitness, and with some, subspecialties to help people understand athletic training a little bit, because that was my educational background. So looking at the physiology of it, writing resources right away, I got into doing that kind of thing. So writing articles and training manuals and so on. So I had to do a lot of research on what happens, what's the physiology of immersion. That's kind of a passion of mine, because it does such phenomenal things to the body, most of them amazing and good, sometimes limiting for some people. So learning about the physiology of immersion and how to work the water well, to me, was really important. And I really liked bringing that piece to novice instructors, because, as you know, too often people might come from the land-based world and they think, well, I just teach an aerobics class on the deck and we're good to go. And we know that's not true, and that's not really getting the most benefit for the clients. And the water is just so adaptable. I mean, you can, in the same class, I might have somebody who's a weekend warrior or a triathlete, and somebody who's rehabbing from knee surgery. And if I do my job correctly, they will both be accommodated correctly by learning what they need to do to make the workload up to optimize it for where they're at and what their training goals are.
Excellent. So do you think that for somebody who's new coming into the industry, that the physiology of immersion is one of the sort of the key things, one of the first things that they really need to get their head around and understand?
Yes, that, because they need to understand the environment they're working in and how profoundly it affects the people they're working with. But also equally important, or even maybe more important, is understanding how to create load in the water, how to create overload. So learning how to use the drag properties of the water and, again, misconceptions. People think, well, faster is harder. Yes, it is. Resistance is exponentially related to speed, but as soon as you start doubling and quadrupling the speed, people are not humanly possible. It's not humanly possible for them to move any range at all. So they end up doing these little tiny hamster on a wheel kind of movements, as opposed to exploring their range of motion. So I've evolved in the sense that I really see the need for instructors to understand good technique. Because when people move with good technique, they really can optimize the workout, and they can optimize strength throughout range. as opposed to let's go faster, let's go faster, let's go faster, because that's harder.
I think that's always been one of my big frustrations, as well. As you say to, go a bit faster, and then as you say, you get these little tiny movements, and you think,
yeah, and they're hunched over and they're not breathing, and it just looks horrible.
It's a bit like when they use the dumbbells, isn't it? And they just have them up here, and you're thinking, yes, of course we all work up here, that's where our arms live all the time, so it's,
well, and in my programs, whether it's one-to-one or in a group, people have to earn buoyant equipment, and they earn it by showing me they can keep their shoulder blades down through anything I throw at them. And if they can do that, and they completely understand that, and they can maintain optimal alignment throughout all kinds of intensities, then we might try something buoyant. But I'm more a fan of drag equipment, because most people don't have good scapular set. They can't keep their shoulders down. So
yeah. Absolutely. I like that idea, actually. They have to earn the equipment.
Well, and instructors, I mean, I train novice instructors all the time as well, just to do aquafit at community pools. And unfortunately, administrators will say, well, what equipment do I buy to make my programs better? You buy training for your staff is what you buy.
Yes.
Because putting equipment in the hands of people who don't know how to teach with it properly, or people in the pool who don't know how to move properly without equipment, it's like giving people a loaded gun. They don't know what they're doing. The opportunity for injury around the shoulders is great. And so to give that to novice instructors and say, well, now we're going to teach you how to use, here you go, buoyant equipment, everybody needs the dumbbells. And the participants will actually try to force the instructors to get that equipment going when they don't know what they're doing, and the instructor doesn't know what they're doing. So that it's a personal pet peeve, as you might have gathered. But
no, I'm with you 100% on that. And when you get the little old ladies that come and take the biggest dumbbells out of the box, and you think, really, can you actually engage scapular stability? Chances are no.
Well, and they're grasping the whole time, right? They're gripping and grasping, and a lot of them may have arthritic upper extremities, hand, wrist, elbow, shoulder. And so you're putting this loaded gun in their hand and saying, go for it, Mabel. It's just not a good thing.
No, quite agree. So we started off, just going back a little bit, we started off talking about A.R.E.A. and how both of us present for that company, and that's the Aquatic Therapy and Rehab Institute, for those that don't know. But what started your journey with that? What sort of led you into that, and what do you enjoy teaching?
Well, sorry?
Other
Say
than
again?
immersion and equipment.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Actually, I don't really do much on equipment with them, but yes, I became acquainted with A.R.E.A. around 05 or 06. I think I went to a conference, and then shortly after I applied to present at a conference, because I saw that there were some things I thought I could bring to the table for therapists, as well as others who attend A.R.E.A. events. And what I really like about that organization is that it is diverse. It's more of a melting pot. It's not just PTs. It's not just OTAs and PTAs and people who work in the clinical field. It has a great cross-section of people. So that's why you and I are there, because in some other organizations, we wouldn't be if we weren't a registered therapist. And I really like the blend because everyone brings something unique to the table when they're meeting over a lunch at a place like that, whether they're training in an educational event. So I really like the diversity. And 07, I think I did my first conference presentation for them, and it was in Texas. And then thereafter, I've done various ones around the country. And I usually go to Sanibel every year if I can to present there. So yeah, I really like the blend of people that I see there. And there's a range of backgrounds and experience. So you get the brand new therapists who know a lot about injury and healing and their clinical skills, but they don't know the water yet.
Yeah.
So you and I, who have experience in the pool, can certainly bring that expertise and help them get up to speed more quickly so they can service people more quickly. Because my ultimate goal, and I imagine it's yours as well, is the well-being of that little person looking up at you from the water or looking across at you from we want them to get the best experience, to be the best they can be, using the pool as their training or rehab tool.
Absolutely. I don't know if it's the same in Canada as it is over here in the UK, but no matter what the training is, be it the physiotherapists, be it the occupational therapists, be it the sports scientists, the sports rehabilitators, or anything like that, they really don't get very much training in the water at all. And then it's hot luck as to whether when they have their placements that they actually get that as well. And yet, especially over here, when it comes to rehabilitation, they want the physiotherapists. And you sit there and think, well, hang on, there are other professions that have the experience. And actually, and this is my sort of like life goal over here is to actually get it recognized that there's expertise, even swimming teachers, because swimming teachers understand how the human body moves in water. Will actually can give them the other information, will make exceedingly good water people. Maybe taking on from when the physiotherapies are finished, but to take that person, that individual, that injury or something onto its natural conclusion, be it that they need it for the rest of their life, or they just need it for the next 6 months or something like that. So it's sort of, that's a bit of my life goal over here, is to make it accessible and to make the industry recognize that there are a lot of people out there with skills that we can sort of capture and, make everything harmonious between the different industries.
Again, trying to help that end user who wants to benefit from the water. Yeah, it's very interesting over here, and I know I've spoken to a number of therapists in the US at A.R.E.A events, and they will say, well, you're not a therapist, you can't do what you're doing. And I'll say, well, yeah, but I am. And they'll say, but you can't, the billing won't allow it, the law won't allow it. And they said, well, it's a little different in Canada. And it has evolved and changed a bit where I am too. For years, I worked with people after I learned Aqua Stretch particularly, but even before that, I worked with people from like around 2001 on. I was working with physiotherapy clients in an offsite pool, and mainly just with exercise first. But then secondly to that, I got trained in Aqua Stretch, and I brought that to the pool, and it had amazing results. So it evolved that the College of Physiotherapy, my clinics that I was working with, were saying, well, that because the regulations have become very tight, they didn't have to send a physio to supervise me, but what I had to do was train the physio in what I do, so that the physio could then look at my notes, prescribe, understand what I was doing. So that's what I have done. I'm still linked up with a physio in my community where I trained her. Yeah. So now she can supervise me.
It's crazy, isn't it? Absolutely crazy.
Yes. Yeah, odd, but that's, and I understand there are laws in place to try to protect people, but it's also about insurance and not funding things, and it gets kind of complicated and political. But the other thing, I like what you said about the fact that there are so many people who have expertise that they can bring to that end user. Our physio treatment only lasts for so long, even when you do have nationally funded healthcare or insurance funded healthcare. And when that runs out, then what? So actually, I do train Aqua Fitness leaders, and I've created a certification program for that. But I also created a program for, can you see? There you go.
Yeah,
and that's mainly Aquability. So that's basically a one-day training course for people who are already Aqua Fitness certified, so that they can learn to work with populations who may need accommodations based on their health considerations. And I really encourage facilities, I work with facilities in terms of training and certifying their instructors, but I encourage them to shy away from things like, this is an arthritis class, this is a fibromyalgia class, this is a joint replacement class. Because what happens in the community setting, I find, is people will come because it's 10 o'clock on Tuesday and their friend is going. And if the facility sets it up and calls it a therapeutic class, the assumption by the participants is that a therapist will be teaching it. And the assumption is that the therapist will have their health notes and will modify things accordingly for them. They want a therapeutic level of intervention. And yet the community center is providing a lifeguard who's trained to be an aqua fitness leader, who now is teaching this group of 20 people who have joint replacements.
Yeah.
You know, so the expectation of the participant is that they're getting this person who is highly trained, highly skilled, and is a therapist. And the facility is saying, we're only paying a lifeguard to go out there and to teach this group of people. So my goal is to at least have the lifeguards know, who are trained to be aqua fitness leaders, and to get them certified that they know how to do no harm, how to help that person optimize their workout, and put some of the responsibility back on the user to think about, if this hurts, I'm not going to do it. So what else could I do? And really kind of simplify it, keep it at a level where it can be a community delivered program, and therefore affordable for a whole bunch more people than just the therapeutic setting.
Absolutely, because you know the one-to-ones are obviously going to be a lot more expensive than the group setting. And so yeah, I have a similar class where I teach. You know, sometimes the people say to me, "You're a physiotherapist?" I say, no, my degree is rehabilitation, but I'm what I call a rest of life specialist. The physio, and when they're in the hospital care and the immediate post, I said, that's not my area of interest. I say, when you say, okay, I've had my 6 with the physio, now what do I do? I'll go, okay, now I'll step up.
Yes, exactly.
It's something that we tend to do, especially people that come to the water. They do tend to need it for the rest of their life. And it is the only thing that, I don't know if you agree, but it's sort of, in my book, it's the only thing that you can do. You know, no matter what happens to the human body, you can still get in the pool. So you can lose limbs, you can lose all your limbs, and you can still actually get in the pool and train, and you can still have a profound effect from being in water. So
that's right. Yeah. So, you know, there are, of course, a few restrictions for people going in the water based on open wounds and some incontinence issues and vertigo, and there's a few, and we talk about the list of this is a person who may not be suitable for the water. And I've working with the physio clinics, just to back up that truck a little bit. I ended up getting I was the last chance hotel, really. If they could not make progress on land, if they weren't getting anywhere, if they just kept crashing and burning with their land-based physio and kinesiology appointments, they got sent to me. So by default, you tend to see the people who are affected with persistent pain, who are highly pain sensitized. And, you know, I've had very few over the past dozen years or so. I've had very few who actually the touch of the water on their skin was too intense for them to tolerate. Just literally a handful, fewer than 5.
Yeah, I've had 1 in my entire career.
So they are out there. There's some people who are so highly sensitized, they can't even stand their clothing on their skin, let alone having the water touching their skin. So there are a few people for whom it may not be the best fit, but by and large, for most people, unless they have some specific reason not to be, it's going to be a good fit and something they can do the rest of their life. And, you know, a really useful way to stay more active so they can improve.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so just changing subject a little bit, have you always worked in the pool, or have you ever had any other career?
Well,
a few years on land, but
yes, I did a number of years teaching land-based fitness. Yes, and my background was in exercise physiology. So I got into the sort of the land-based fitness piece pretty soon after I finished the master's degree. I'm also a qualified teacher. So I have taught in the school system, grade 7 and 8. So after about 5 6 years of that, I said, you know what, really, I was doing adult ed before I got into this school system, and I really just reestablished that my love was adult ed. A funny side story, when I started teaching in the school system, again, grade 7 and 8, both my sons were in the school I was teaching in, and the first subject I came in teaching was sex ed. So there's my boys sitting in class with mom teaching sex ed. You can imagine how well that went over. But yeah, it was fun. It was enjoyable. I'm glad I did it. But really, my love is adult education, and I have done that for a number of years. So what I'm finding, and I know you and I have talked a little bit about this, our area of expertise is the human body and how it works, and our love is research about that and how we apply that research and make it real and useful for people. That's the meat of what we're getting into. But I'm finding that this educating people, providing information for people, tends to be where we need to go to reach more people, because I've had people contact me from, you know, Australia and Mauritius and like all over the world who do want training, and shipping manuals or getting together is, well, now impossible, but also just cost prohibitive, even when there is not a pandemic going on. So my area of non-expertise is things like creating online courses, you know, doing all the video editing, camera angles, and setting up online courses so that they are interactive and meaningful and useful to our users, to our learners. So that's been a big learning curve for me over the last 5 years. And thank God we both have children who can educate us and help us get up to speed. Yeah, so that's the piece where, you know, that's sort of not where I thought I would be, but here I am figuring out how to translate this PowerPoint to an online format that will be useful in a course.
Yeah, it's very interesting actually, to have something that, as you said, you know, you said yourself, like 5 years ago, we would never have thought you could do aquatic education online. But now we're finding that there are ways that we can actually get it across on this, which is, you know, it's definitely something that I never thought we'd be able to do. No, you can't, it's hands-on. Or no, you can't, because you need to be feeling this. But there are ways around it. It does make, I think, our use of the English language a lot more broad, really, because you have to find different descriptive words for things that you would be normally saying, you know, touch this, do this. And now you're having to sort of find the words to actually describe it and put the same thing across. So I've got visual aids now as well that I'm using online. So
yes, and I'm and you're probably in the same scenario, but I'm helping some of my trainers learn how to put a course together online. So training trainers is part of what I do as well, and I have done that for years. So training people how to be good educators, which of course we're always learning ourselves, but helping people to break down what they need to, you know, what you thought was one little thought nugget is at least 4 different lessons. By the time you break it down, describe it, give people a way to apply it, try it, and think about where we go from here. So it's a complex kind of getting inside the human head and looking at different learning styles and trying to help people get there. And that's really important to both of us, I know. So we share that for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one thing that I think is a bit of a shame is the fact that across the world, there's very, everybody has different ways of education. It'd be so nice if there was a sort of like a blanket that you could say, right, you know, these qualifications can be relevant, you know, in all these different countries. Because I know that a lot of things that I bring over from the States and I bring over, well, I haven't brought anything over yet from Canada, but I bring over, I have to sort of convert, get it into English sort of accreditations and English systems, because otherwise the English people aren't interested, because if they can't get their reps points or their SIMSPA points, then it doesn't sort of go towards their annual accumulation of continuous professional development. So it's
and you know,
challenging.
It is, and I think a real well, there's a number of frustrations with working in pools and trying to do what we do with pools. First of all, I think water people are the most creative on the planet. We have to be. So if you said to an aerobics instructor, well, you're going into your room today to teach. By the way, it's going to cost you $200 an hour for the room because it has to be guarded. Secondly, the quality of the air in the room today means that really you probably shouldn't teach today. And the temperature is so far off that nobody can work in there.
Yeah.
You know, if in the aerobics industry, we're faced with that all the time, there would be so many crash and burns. We have to, and oh, by the way, while you're doing it, there's a group of kids over in the back corner and they're learning to do soccer, football. So there'll be whistles going off while they do that. And then there's going to be something going on over here where there's a few other people who are just going to be running back and forth across the room while you're teaching. You know, if you really set up the scenario that we deal with all the time in the pool, and if land-based folks had to face that every day, I don't think they would do as well as we do, because we've learned we have to roll with the punches. We have to accommodate. If the water's colder by 2 degrees, I have to completely change my lesson plan.
Absolutely. On the spot as well.
We have to be so creative, and our access to pools. I was watching some others of your presenters on your site and realizing that people who are world-class presenters who may be running clinics and courses and programs that are the top notch in their country, they don't have their own pool.
Yeah.
They don't have their own pool. They're dealing with a rented space. They're dealing with sharing their space while they're trying to do activities. Where is that? Where does that ever happen? It only happens in our industry. It's so expensive to maintain a body of water and to keep the room, and we're facing all of that with COVID now, to get people back into those spaces in a way that's safe and healthy, and trying to look at what the variables are to make that work. So, you know, the frustrations, I guess, with our industry are that, you know, who else in the world has to deal with not having a training venue or having it be so expensive and having to share it all the time? You know, when people work in this industry, how do they make money? They just don't make much money. And the paradigm here is that we want lifeguards to teach classes because we want to pay them lifeguard wages, which is just about the same as flipping burgers at McDonald's, even though they have to pay to maintain all kinds of credentials and all their continuing education. So they really only do it if they are people who are extremely community minded, who want to give to their community and want that as a resume piece. And they won't be in it for long, because who can afford to be in it for long?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the lack of money is hard.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's the most wonderful career that there is out there. I wouldn't change it for anything.
Absolutely.
It is,
yeah, and we do it because it's rewarding, obviously, but not financially rewarding. It's because we watch somebody who came in with a frozen shoulder that'd been that way for 2 years, and they walk out with their hand on their head crying because they haven't had their arm above shoulder height for 2 years, and you just did it in half an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is beyond, because I know where that's come from, to Aqua.
Yes, yeah. So for both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your journey with Aqua Stretch, because you've taken it on and you now teach Self-Aqua Stretch as well. So tell me a little bit about that.
Sure, yes. I was delighted to hook up with George Eversole, and this was back in, there we go, and that was back in 2010. And so George wanted to, bless his heart, he wasn't trying to monetize it at all. He wanted to get his program, his fascial release techniques out to the world. So he got in touch with A.R.E.A, and it took him several tries, but eventually he got a conduit to talk to a number of A.R.E.A faculty who were interested in coming and learning Aqua Stretch from him. So I did that in 2010. When I went to be trained by George, it was very interesting. He Aqua Stretched me on the evening I arrived, because I'd never even experienced it. I went in just blindly accepting that this would be an interesting thing to do. So flew down to Vegas, went in on the Friday night when we got there, and he Aqua Stretched me. The next morning I got up, I went to the pool, and every half hour he sent me another client for 8 hours. Every half hour.
Yeah.
So by the end of the day, I couldn't hold a fork in my hand. My hands were so pooched from all the grips and holds. And I had another another trained person or two, Jessica, and another woman who's a massage therapist. So they kind of looked over my shoulder and helped me through it until I got the grips and holds down. But there were no pictures of anything. There were no descriptions of anything. It was all oral history, touch, feel, do. So while we were still there, I said to George, no, I'm an educator. If you want me to teach people to do this, I need a picture of everything, and I need you to describe everything for me in detail. So that's what we did for the next day and a half, 2 days. And then with Laurie Denemy, we created a resource on that. And I also worked with other A.R.E.A faculty. So we created one resource, which that one was for facilitators who might be recreational or fitness folks. And then one with the A.R.E.A was for more for therapists. So we created those training resources. I went back twice more and spent time with George on subsequent years to do in all about 3 training sessions where I was hands-on with him. At the end of it, he was letting me do Aqua Stretch on him, which was quite an honor. So I fell in love with it because as an exercise physiologist and an exercise person, I was always hands-off. I may show you an exercise, I may help you guide a stretch or whatever, but I wasn't putting my hands on people or doing anything with their soft tissues other than telling them how to exercise them. So with Aqua Stretch, this was a whole new world for me to start thinking about how fascia affects movement, how restriction of fascia can really negatively affect movement, how we can really facilitate people moving comfortably again by getting their fascia moving comfortably. So I worked in that since 2010 and wrote numerous resources and taught lots and lots of courses to different people. And then I was discovering, especially with my persistent pain people, that sometimes their hands wouldn't let me in. It didn't matter how gently I went, how I wouldn't accentuate their movement, I wouldn't put any kind of pressure on, but just their brain was so highly sensitized to pain that even touching them was something they couldn't tolerate. So I thought, well, how about if I get them to put their hands on their own body? And they're developed Self-Aqua Stretch. So there was another reason for Self-Aqua Stretch too, which is another small side story. And that is that the clinic called me up one day and said, well, we're referring a lady to you. She has sued her last 3 therapists. We just thought we'd let you know. Oh, well, thank you very much. So when she came to the pool, I documented every single session, no physical contact. I did not touch her. I would get her to put her hands on my body and feel something, or I would just show her with my body how to Self-Aqua Stretch myself. And she had amazing results. I didn't get sued, which is good. But she also had phenomenal results, which kind of blew me away. I thought, well, this would be, not as good as. And of course, a trained facilitator can get at things in a way that you can't necessarily do with your own hands. But it empowered people to solve problems when they couldn't get to the pool or to me. They could do things at work at their desk that would be, at least 50 to 75% as effective as it would have been had we been in the water. I could teach people how to resolve a headache, how to keep that shoulder or that newly replaced joint moving, and to reduce their own pain and facilitate their own movement. And it's been really rewarding. I've really enjoyed it. So I've created an online course for people to do, and I also train it at conferences. Excellent.
Yeah. No, it's something that I must admit I haven't done that course of yours yet, but it's on my hit list. So, but it's great if it's an online course, because again, that's something that maybe we can look at in offering over here and have a look, perhaps getting the UK accreditation for it. So
that would be excellent. Yeah, I would love to. I think a really nice reciprocal event would be someday you and I in the pool, or me taking your Aqua Stretch training, you taking my Aqua Stretch training, because we all morph and adapt and do things slightly differently, not because we're weird, just because life teaches us unique things.
Absolutely. And I've always been a person that says you can't very easily teach someone else's course unless you're inside their head. So you have to have that information. And if you haven't, then you'll go down a slightly different avenue. And I do believe that the Aqua Stretch I do here in the UK has a slightly different tangent, because I remember sort of George saying, you know, but if you don't understand this, then you don't understand. So I think, well, off I go. I'm going to go and understand that. I need to know, because that's how my brain thinks. So yes, I think we all do have that sort of thing. So okay.
Yes, and I love that you're doing research in the area of fascia, and that's wonderful. It's long overdue for somebody to take that on. So I'm really proud of you for doing that, and I look forward to reading more articles and learning more from your studies on it.
Thank you. Hopefully next year there'll be, I've got sort of something that's on the boil, but of course got shelved in March.
So, yes, as many things did. Yes,
that's it. So hopefully we'll bring that back. Okay, so so the next thing I was thinking is, what, after all this, what has been your biggest challenge in your career so far?
Well, again, I'm back to the money and pools, and in the aquatic field particularly, there just seem to be a lot of roadblocks for people. And when I'm training instructors who are novice for aqua fitness, and I'm training therapists, and I think universally the hard thing is for people to get pool space that they can use affordably. And we want to keep the cost low for the end user. So, you know, money is, we don't want it to be a problem, but it always seems to be a stumbling block in terms of getting pool space programmed for you that doesn't cost the moon, and having people have the ability to access the beauty of the water and use it for their purposes without it costing them too much. And in the middle, you've got instructors and therapists and trainers and movement motivators, I call them. So you've got those people who want to get people moving, and they have to feed their children too. So, you know, it's very hard to have them compensated accurately for the work they have to do to get where they are. So unfortunately, money ends up being a really big sticking point, and facilities. So, you know, I keep coming up against those brick walls with wanting to program and wanting to get more people trained. I think another thing is understanding. You know, we both had to learn what the water brings, how to best get the most out of it for people. And the comments still from facility managers or pool programmers, they tend to think equipment. They tend to think, what do I have to change about my facility? No, you have to change what's going on up here, and in your staff, they have to understand what they're doing, because without that, no piece of equipment, no anything else you do will have the same effect as having well-trained, knowledgeable staff.
Absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't have put it better myself. I think that's, yeah. In a nutshell.
It's hard, right? Yeah, it's hard because they tend to think equipment, not knowledge.
Yeah.
And there's also a high turnover. So I understand where they're coming from. Again, we're back to money, but because lifeguarding and that working in the pools for young folk, usually it's a 2 or 3 year gig, and then they're off to their real life, and they leave that behind because they can't afford to do it anymore. And so, you know, so they have, the programmers have this constant turnover, and they're like, well, if I train somebody and then they're gone in 2 years, I'm back to square one. So I'll buy equipment. Thank you very much.
This is partly why I think that we should be encouraging the swimming teachers as well, because that has, you know, over here anyway, that is a profession, and they do tend to stay in that for a long time. And everywhere I've worked in all over 20 years that I've been doing it, that I think it's 26 now. Well, but the swimming teachers tend to stay probably about 10 years on average, if not longer, at a facility. So if we can encourage those to sort of get more involved on the other aspects as well as swimming, I think that will help as well. So that's sort of,
yeah, we can then
water as well. I mean, they
like, and just like we want a continuum of care for our clients, but we want a continuum of career for the people that we impact with the kind of training and work that we do, because that's important. Why lose all that knowledge base that you've built up? Why dump that and go on to working in an office somewhere when maybe all that skill and knowledge that you have can be translated and transferred to doing something that will keep you there, doing what you love.
Absolutely. So what's been your biggest reward then? If that's what you feel is the biggest challenge, so what's the biggest reward?
Seeing people get it. So whether that's somebody, oh yeah. So whether that's somebody learning something in a course or coming out of an Aqua Stretch course going, oh my God, look what I can do. This is so amazing. It feels so great. I can't wait. I can't wait to do this with people. Or you're seeing a trainer who gets up in front of a group and finally has it click for them, you know, whatever the knowledge piece that people are trying to get as a mentor and a trainer and an educator for years and years. I really love when people get it. And it's also seeing the light bulb in the eyes when somebody finally feels a ski done properly in deep water. They finally feel their glutes engage and their hamstrings, and they go, oh wow, that's so much different than what I was doing. So it's on, you know, all levels in the continuum, but seeing somebody get it, that what we know and love, and that we're trying to teach somebody on any level, it's really wonderful and rewarding when you see them have that light bulb moment and forever after do things differently. Yeah, it's lovely. They sort of has that family feeling, doesn't it? The only sort of feeling I think from the fitness industry is the water has that sort of comforting family feeling, whereas everything else is very sort of distant and very sort of challenging, and they challenge each other. It's, you know, that sort of macho gym aspect of things, whereas we've got the sort of the mothering, the Mother Earth, the nurturing side when it comes to the pool, which is lovely. Yeah. The water is hugging you, right? The water is hugging you as opposed to beating you up. Although you can beat people up in the water, we know that, but yeah, it tends to be that real connection.
Yeah, tactile. What, you know, I say to people that sort of the human body needs to be touched, and the water gives it that touch. Because I always remember one of the old ladies that came to the pool who was a carer for her husband, and she'd come in and she'd really want to give it everything she could, and she'd batter 7 shades out of the water, and she'd want the biggest equipment and everything else, and make it harder, make it harder. And I think that was partly her frustration of being the carer, and it was the only way she could get her sort of anger in a way out. And then the husband died, and then she suddenly became very passive in the water and sort of stood more on the back row, what I call the tea and biscuits row, not really do exercise. But it was, I think, at that point, and we are talking back in the 90s, but it was at that point that I sort of realised that it probably was the only time that she had communication with other adults, and that she was touched again. And it was as important even just to stand there and have that water give her that hug as it was for her to, you know, beat 7 shades out of the water when everything was what was her normal. So yeah, the water's a very, very special place.
Yes.
If you were to retire, if ever you were to retire,
and somebody nails the lid shut on the coffin. Yes.
That's it. I think that's the only time we do retire from this industry. What would you want to be reminded for? What would you want to be remembered for? What's your sort of like, I think I can guess, but
yeah, okay. Well, maybe you should tell me. Well, I think that again, if I have become the mentor and the educator of other people delivering programs and doing things. So just being remembered for doing that well, for somebody feeling like they could progress their career, they could get to the next step, or that they could get to the next phase of their rehab because of the help they got, that I had helped facilitate somebody else's growth, I guess, whether it's a physio client or a trainer who wants to move to an international level of training or whatever it is, that somebody felt they could make a next step because I held their hand and helped them get there.
That's what I was. That's
Was that what you would have guessed?
That's what I would have said. That's exactly.
There you go. And I invented something too, which maybe you're going to get to later. So that may be a bit of a legacy.
That's a very special piece. Have you got one to show? Because I haven't got one.
I do. Yeah. So
yes. Let's talk
once
about
again.
This is amazing.
Go ahead. Yeah. So I wanted. This is a wave rider, and I partnered up with Craig, who at HydroFit. Yeah. And I wanted to create something that was cost effective and adaptable, and that was good flotation for suspended or deep water exercise. So people could do open kinetic chain, get off the floor. Belts can be excellent, but they can also be problematic because they have to be cinched up tightly, essentially right around the diaphragm, right around the abdomen, or they become push-up bras. So while that might look better, it doesn't help you breathe. So I had this idea in my head for quite a number of years, and a designer friend of mine who's a fabric artist just passed away from cancer this spring, a dear friend, Rena Cote. She did me the prototype. I had actually contacted Craig Stewart from HydroFit, and I had said, I have this idea and I'd like to work with you on it. I had met him at an A.E.A. trade show and really thought he was a great guy, and I really liked what he was doing in the field. So he was the first person who came to mind. And he said, well, interestingly, before I even showed him my prototype, he said, interestingly, we're working on that as well. Pelvic flotation is what it's called, which sounds something like you get in the red light district, but it's not. So the idea is you're being floated from the pelvis, not from the shoulders, not from a belt around your waist. And so a patent had expired on a different device that had a patent on. He says, so the patent's gone on that. We're wide open to create something like that. We've created a prototype as well. He said, you send me yours, I'll send you mine, and we'll see which one we like moving forward. So we did that. Mine won. Mine was way cheaper to make. It was more comfortable. It was more adaptable. So so essentially it's a sling. And in the sling, there's where your pelvis goes, right at the bottom of the sling. And then it has slots in it that you can put noodles in. So you ride on the sling, and this is in front of your torso and behind your torso, and it keeps you afloat. So the neat thing is you can change the size of the noodles of the flotation devices. And actually the one that HydroFit is selling them, I sell them in Canada, HydroFit sells them elsewhere in the world, so USA and beyond. They use a more dense white noodle you've probably seen. It's like, it's this type of noodle. So it's solid core. Yeah, it's solid core. It's very robust, and it's more buoyant than your store-bought noodle. But I wanted to be able to ship this inexpensively and give people guidance on how they could put their own noodle in. Because the pool noodle is one of the least expensive, most available pieces of water equipment you can get. Everybody can get their hands on one. So they can cut it up and use it how they want. So if they don't need much flotation, and I talk to them about the T-test, how to establish how much flotation you need based on your body composition. So they can take out the bottom one if they don't need as much, or they can make the noodle pieces shorter. They can use longer pieces that are solid core if they need more flotation. So with the right noodle pieces in, this will keep a very dense 18-year-old male lifeguard afloat. With less buoyancy in it, it'll keep someone who's only needs a little tiny bit afloat. So it's adaptable that way, and it's way more comfortable for a lot of people than having something cinching in their diaphragm and restricting their breathing. So it's been very successful, even good in open water. So I have a friend who's taken it out on the provincial lakes here, which are big and quite choppy, and she's very rock solid. So
is there any contraindications for it?
Only if somebody has a lot of pelvic pain. So I have worked with some persistent pain folks who their issue is pelvic pain, which can be from a whole variety of causes, but they may have too much sensitivity in the crotch to ride on a noodle. So it's kind of an elevated version of just riding a noodle, like riding a horse.
Yeah.
This is more comfortable than that. But still, some people can't stand to have that pressure, or they may have chafing if their thighs are quite close together, but they can turn the middle of it so that the middle is like more of a thong, if you like. And I do advise people to wear leggings in the water anyway. So if you wear leggings, there's no chafing issues. No. And that only becomes really a big issue if people are doing, for example, a lot of water running, where they're doing a really repetitive running or skiing activity, as opposed to doing a variety of leg actions. Yeah.
You kindly gave me one from when we saw each other at A.R.E.A, and I love it. So
good. Yeah, it's simple, right? It's a simple concept, and I like pelvic flotation is actually more stable. So one of the things that people will say was that, well, I'm not a swimmer, right? And they, in their brain, they're thinking, well, if I lean sideways on this, I'm going to fall out of it. I'm going to fall off it. If I were doing a lot of lateral inclined work with somebody for whatever reason, then a belt might be a better idea than this. But actually it's more stable than a belt, because the flotation is outside of your body, front and back. And that's very stabilizing. It's more stable than a belt. A belt's harder to keep your vertical alignment, as you know, because you've worked with this. You can actually maintain your vertical alignment more easily with this. So
that's lovely. Excellent. Good. Have you got any other sort of plans for any other equipment lined up, or is
No, that was kind of that had been in my head for a long time, and I was just really happy that Craig was able to help me take it to fruition and get it out to people, because I didn't want to have to deal with sourcing material and hiring people to work in a factory, and like he had all that in place, and he's a guy of great integrity, and I really respect him. In terms of other equipment, I think I mentioned earlier, I'm more of a drag forces kind of person. So if people are looking for more equipment because they want more intensity, my favorite thing to suggest to them is an aquatic glove, because it's not expensive. You can personalize it, and you can have your own for not much money and keep it. So now that we're worried about people touching other people's equipment, it can be just yours. You can keep it in your swimming kit and just take it with you. And this is not one intensity. This is slice, fist, flat fist and flat hand, fingers open or closed. So it's about 5 or 6 intensities, and that's a pretty good deal for about $20.
I'm definitely now in favour of people having their own equipment instead of storing it at the pool. I think, if you've got something that sort of folds nicely into your swimming bag, then that's the way to go. I think that's how we're all going to be moving forward.
And I've known pool groups who have cobbled together, and the MacGyvers in the group, the lady MacGyvers, got some bathing suit fabric and made their own. This is not hard to make, right? You just, it's like drawing your handprint on something and just tracing around it and making a mitten. So it's not hard to do, and people could even make their own if they, but simply they could hold on to a sponge, or they could, those bath scrunchies are actually a really nice piece of kit for the water if people want a little bit more upper extremity resistance. Or again, back to noodles. This is a MacGyvered version of, and do you use that expression over there, MacGyver? Okay, so somebody who cobbles together whatever, who can make a car out of a cardboard box and some twine and some tape. That's what we call it here. So anyway, but this is a squoodle, so adapted so that people don't have to grip.
Yes.
So for people with arthritic hands who might want to use a piece of noodle as a training device, and sometimes we want it in therapy as well, right? Because we want the arm supported. We want the arm resting on something while we're exploring ranges slowly. So it can be used for that as well. And this way they don't have to hang on to anything. And if you have money, then you can buy the commercial version where it's been done for you. but again, nobody I know has any money. So
especially now.
we always, yeah, especially now. Yeah. So we always are looking for plan B to help people achieve the result they seek without having to lay out much in the way of cash.
And the one that you showed, the first one, the sort of the free one, you could take some of the noodles that have been chewed up. That's one. You could take some of the chewed up noodles that have got decent bits and the ends have been eaten, and just chop it into that as well. So it gives them a sort of a second lease of life. So.
Exactly. Yes. And you can even cut these so you just have a disc.
Yeah.
And the disc can be used in the hand as a little bit more surface area, but also a stabilizer for the fingers. So some people appreciate that. So there's, you know, there's lots of, again, pool people are the most creative people on the planet. I'm convinced of it. We have to be. And so that's what we become, because there's never any money and we still have to get the job done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we do too.
Talking about favorite pieces of equipment, and I didn't invent this, I wish I did, but yeah. So this is that's a A.R.E.A. Are you using those in your program there, Lynda?
I don't have, I mean, it's funny because I saw one at the conference a couple of years ago and I meant to buy it and sort of somehow left the conference without it. But it's, you used it or you demonstrated it or something on something fairly recent.
Yeah, so for Self-Aqua Stretch, I like it because if I want to put pressure into the top of the traps, for example, or go after levator scap or go after my mid scapular muscles, I can do Self-Aqua Stretch by applying all the Aqua Stretch principles. I play, I feel where it's tight, I put pressure where it feels tight and restricted, and then I move. And I move intuitively. So this allows me to put pressure where I couldn't necessarily reach with my hand.
Yeah.
So I can use it for the butt cheek for piriformis. I can use it for my low back muscles, getting into the paraspinal muscles or quadratus lumborum. I can get at those muscles very nicely with this. And the other thing is it's water friendly. It's indestructible. So I like A.R.E.A. because I'm familiar with it, but I know there are other companies out there that make something similar. So you could look around for, if you can't find a A.R.E.A. that can be shipped to you, you can look for something equivalent.
Yeah.
So it's a great tool.
I've got a ball in my bag for rolling on the foot and sticking in the glute, you know, put it against the wall.
Yeah, absolutely. It's simple, and it's so simple, right? Yeah, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money.
No.
So I send people to the dollar store, and I'm getting them to look for different sizes of balls and dog toys that are the right shape and that can be used for fascial release on their own at home. And it saves them a bucket of money, because if you call it a therapeutic device, add a zero to the price.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you give something a title, it instantly goes up in price and cost and everything. So.
And you can say, well, yeah, they had R&D and they sometimes have insurance costs associated with it because it's something that people could potentially hurt themselves with in a therapeutic setting, and then you're looking at legal issues, and so there is that to it. But really, the dollar store is my friend.
Absolutely. It's amazing what you can find in there, isn't it? All the
Again, creative people, right? We find solutions that are cost effective.
Yeah. I remember finding a few years ago a frisbee thing that was made out of like neoprene but had holes in it. So I just sort of went, oh, put my fingers in. £1 it cost. Put my fingers in. It's meant for the pool. Off I went, and was sort of like doing these creative things and movements. So.
Yep. Yeah. And you love it. One of your favorite pieces of kit, probably. And, it cost you £1. So there you go.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think I sort of come to the end of my questions, really, and my thoughts. Is there anything else you want to add? I think I'm glad that you about your wave rider, because that is a phenomenal piece of kit. And again, it's really important for people to know what there is out there, not just the noodles and the dumbbell. I think it's vital.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's as I mentioned, I'm working a lot on online avenues for training and education, as you are. If you want to list my Thinkific course site on our discussion, there are some free courses on there, and they're aimed at They're aimed at the lay public. And sometimes therapists and educators will look at them because they want to get ideas from them.
Yeah.
But there's one on there called Success Tips for Aquatic Clients. So it's basically, it's on the Thinkific site. I can give you the link to the site as well as to that course. And that's to help prepare people who are coming to be Aqua Stretched. So what should you do ahead of time, afterwards, what to ask your therapist about, what, you know, where do I park? How do I get there? Is there a locker for my bathing suit? Simple things like that, but also other things that will help make their session more comfortable and more effective for them. Because as you know, the people that we see, usually they're coming because they're in pain. And when you're in pain, you're also afraid that whatever this new intervention is going to cause you more pain. So there's a lot of worry about those first few sessions and until people find their way. Even just finding their way in the facility is important. So there's that course. There's another course on there called the Back Whisperer. And that's for people, it's again for the lay public, and it's free. So people can think about techniques for training the core. And these are based on the research of Dr. Stuart McGill, who's a professor emeritus, I think, at my local university here. And he did a lot of research on disc health and how the discs of the human back are injured and how much force it takes to do that. And when we're rehabbing or when we're exercising, what kinds of forces are put on the discs of the back. So he's kind of single-handedly responsible for the fact that now people use planks to train the core instead of doing endless crunches. He's that guy. So that research is kind of just encapsulated and abbreviated for people to understand, very, very simple, simplified, so that people can get the gist of it. And then so applying that to the water. So how do I train in the water? So I'm not doing endless crunches. I'm not tying my feet down to something and doing hip flexor work with spinal flexion and calling that core training. So it's a good basic course for anybody, really. There's also a paid course which has continuing ed credits with it, but the free course is there, and really it's aimed at anyone, whether they're a movement motivator or whether they are somebody just wanting to learn from that for their own exercise. And I'm just working on a new course there, which I think will be free as well, and it's about people dealing with chronic pain.
Yeah, I've just put a chronic pain one up on the A.R.E.A Facebook page as well.
Great. I'll look forward to checking it out for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lovely. All right. Well, Connie, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's really nice. We need to make some time just to chat whenever, right?
Absolutely. So yeah,
I love it.
I think we've got some good work that we could do together as well. So.
I think we do, for sure. Like minds.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Well, take care, and thank you again for the chance to chat to you.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Connie. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, Lynda.